Also warm welcome to all of you in the name of Slovenian partners, 3 partners. I was asked to present some key challenges in forestry, which has been also a part of our introductory debate, what shall we include into our e-learning program that we have produced within the Erasmus project. So, first of all, we will go briefly through the presentation. Has 2 parts. The first part is presentation of main challenges in forestry sector and their impact on forest management. We will talk about three main subjects, which is demand, motivation, and disturbances. Then in the second part, we will try to present a little bit how adapted forest management policies are produced and which of the answer we can find through the professional education in forestry. So let's go to the main point. What are the main nowadays challenges in forestry sector are, first is demand for wood and non-wood products is growing. This is evident, and if you are working in forestry, you all know that. The second part is that forest resources are underutilized due to property fragmentation, lack of knowledge and motivation, and mostly in a private part of forestry sector. Then the third and according to my opinion, the most important part is that our climate changes we are all dealing with, and we will talk a little bit about its impact on forests and the need for adaptation of forest management strategies. So, to go to the first one, the growing demand is evident in the whole Europe. So some estimations say that the total expected demand for wood will be 853 million in 2030, but presently we are felling in Europe is about 600 million cubic meters. Then the solid uses of wood will grow steadily, but we have emerging new chemical uses which are pretty unpredictable. Then the importance of wood fuel is also growing with a significant on a significant level, so we can expect that in the future. And out of all that, the scarcity of wood is expected, and there will be need for some structural shifts in the forestry sector. So, but the wood is not the only product. The more important are ecological and social functions of forests, and those who are foresters here are very well aware that the society is demanding more and more on that field. And also, if we look to the GDP, the forestry and wood processing industry has not a significant part of GDP. So in Europe it's 0.8%, but this situation is also in Slovenia. But on the other part, perhaps in Slovenia, we are earning 30% of GDP from the tourism, and in Slovenia is our forests, green country, the most important product, touristical product that we are offering. So forestry also have some importance in that. Other ecological functions, hydrological function, protection function, biodiversity, protection of biotopes, climate function. This is the demand for those functions are growing, and the same is with the recreation, tourism, protecting of natural and cultural heritages, and other environmental assets. So this is about the demand. The second challenge is underused resources. This problem is not pronounced at the same level in all European countries, you will see later, but it is evident that current harvesting is below sustainable allowable cut. that the theoretical potential is very high, and but we still don't know what is the really the potential that we can mobilize is not known actually, and at the end we all know that the main potential is locked in private forests, and then the share of private forests in the country also somehow show how this problem is pronounced in some environment. This is from the report of state of the European forests, and you can see that annual felling in annual increment, it's a comparison in European countries, and our three countries as Austria, Croatia and Slovenia are somewhere here, and Austria is using quite a huge percentage of annual increment. This is also a case in Croatia, but Slovenia is not using that potential on a quite low level. So you can see also here is the harvesting in Slovenia in past 26 years, and at the left corner there is a allowable cut which is stated in a forest management plan, and it's around 6.6 billion cubic meters. But you can see that every year we are cutting much less than it is allowable cut in the country. We have reached the allowable cut in past 3 years, but the reason is not more active mobilized forest owners, but the reason are natural disasters. And as you can see, in 2017, last year, when the pressure of natural disaster is going a little bit down, we are again approaching to the 4 million, which was average cutting before. What are the barriers for that problem of wood mobilization? Those are of three types: socio-economic, technical, and environmental. So the first one is demographic change, which is causing the forest owners are older and older. Then is that income from the forest is marginal or unstable. The fragmentation is still going on. In Slovenia, it's a case due to also we have implemented some legal barriers to that fragmentation, but it is still going on. In some cases, there is a difficult access and harvesting in a forest, and the demand for free, so-called free ecosystem services is higher and higher. Then there is also unpredictable impact of climate change. We have been working quite a lot in past few years on that problem. There was one huge project called Simwood, and here are some findings in that project. And first is that the forest management is a tradition, and if we want to change something, then it requires a stable overall policy framework, and we have invested a lot of time and money. So the local conditions we have to take into consideration when designing and implementing those policies to increase wood mobilization. And the main barrier towards why the forest owners are not more active in the forest are mostly on a socio-economic nature. The broader awareness of the benefits of the active and sustainable forest management is needed, and this is what we are also doing with our project. And forest owners associations are the key factor. So we cannot address single forest owner, but we have to address groups of them, and then they have to work further on engagement of the members. The guarantee of the sustainability of more intensive forest management is intensive monitoring of forest, which is needed, and we all agree that the complexity and lack of the wood markets are very complex, and there is a lack of transparency on that field. So this is the second challenge. And the third one, which we are all facing and which is the most important one, is the climate change. And there is a lot of debate about what is the reason and what are the consequences, but climate change are somehow the consequence of non-sustainable use of natural resources. The evidence for climate change can be presented on a different ways, and this is perhaps the annual temperature in Slovenia, which is rising for past 70 years, and from this picture we can see that this rise of the temperature is very evident. What are the expected changes in Central Europe here, and where our countries are? And there is an expected increase in average daily temperature to 2 to 3 degrees. There is a change in precipitation regime. There will be more rain in winter and less in summer. The periods of drought will be longer in the growing season, more heat waves, and the shortening of the period of the snow cover. This is our only glacier in Triglav, and you can see the difference between the year 1946 and 2015. It has almost disappeared. So if we go now to the forests, so the main threats to forests are the rise of average annual temperature and the prolonged length of dry periods. We have already mentioned that. Also regarding the water in a vegetation period, and that all that will cause the changes in tree species distribution. And for spruce, this is very evident in the past few years, not only in Slovenia, but in all other countries. There will be a higher risk for diseases in the forests, like bark beetle, and there will be a higher probability of extreme events. Regarding that last one, I always show the picture. This was produced by the insurance company, and they are collecting data about global natural disasters, and the number of that events globally is rising for 35, 38 years for now, and you can see that for next year we can only say that it will be worse than this year. And on all that, that is a fact that also forestry have to accept. So the main answer, we have three possible answers. First is that we accept all those changes and do business as usual. You know, then we will suffer also the consequences. The second response is mitigation of the impact, and forestry has in that field very important task. And the third is the adaptation measures to reduce the negative effect of the climate change on human well-being is the most important part of that response. So, mitigation, we will not go into details about that, but you all know that forests contribute to the mitigation by they act as a reservoir of carbon, so they reduce the final amount of the CO2 in the atmosphere, and in that area the preservation and increase of forest area is important, and then also carbon is accumulated in a wood increment, and when we use wood as an energy source, we can then avoid the usage of fossil fuels, and so we contribute to also the carbon balance on that way. So why we have to implement the adaptive management immediate? Those facts are that climate change cannot be avoided. This is a fact, and this is what we are facing every day. The second thing is that climate change may proceed even faster and more pronounced than the current estimates suggest. We all know that timely adjustments are effective, but and also cheaper than adaptation in the last minutes. And also from this adaptation measures, we can benefit something and also earn some money on that. You know? This is the projection. The picture represents the 3 species abundance in Europe, and you can see that 3 species act on a very different way, but we will not go into detail of that. What is an adaptive forest management? Adaptive forest management express that climate change uncertainties are large, and we cannot predict exactly what will happen in the future, and we have then continuously readjust all those policies and strategies. The term adaptive management describes such a flexible management approach, and that we are implementing that into also our everyday forest management. And in that process, we have to implement cycles of planning, managing, monitoring, and revised planning and so on. So adaptive management is also based on the assumption that current knowledge about ecosystem functioning is limited and in the future even more uncertain. And the sustainable forest management that we have been dealing with in the project is an effective framework for that climate change response. So the adaptive capacity of forestry sector is quite different in European countries, and we are here on the yellow color, and it's obvious that in those countries more strongly those adaptive capacities are affected by socio-economic constraints. Learning goes also through actual forest management in a forest, and I will show you how it goes in Slovenia. So you have all heard that in 2014 we have faced huge. This is the biggest natural disasters in the history of Slovenian forestry. And this was the ice break in February, which was responsible for 9.3 million cubic meters damaged and more than half of forest. So after we have been, after that, we have faced also the worst bark beetle attack again in the history. And in years 2015 and 2017, those 3 years, almost additional 7 million cubic meters of wood has been damaged by the bark beetle. And the bark beetle always goes with natural disasters in forests. So last December, we have, this is also the picture of how the sanitary felling in Slovenia, and you can see this last part, which is representing the last bark beetle attack. And when we, in last autumn, we have faced that the population of bark beetle is going down, so we were quite fond of that, but then the windbreak in December caused another damage in the forests, and it was responsible for 2.2 million cubic meters of damaged wood. And this is what we are fighting right now. You know the start of the summer is coming, and there is still a lot of conifers in the forest what can cause another bark beetle attack. So in that part we have learned, in that 3 years, we have learned, and this is for me the most important matrix that we are using after for the salvation and the measures of these catastrophic events. And you can see on that part there's importance, and urgency on the other axis. And the most important things are, first we have to clear the roads in order to start the salvation logging, but security trainings are on the top of the top priorities. And we have managed on that field with a lot of investments also with money and everything, we have managed to come from the 18 lethal accidents among private forest owners in 2014 up to 7 last year. But a lot of money for training, demonstration, promotion has been invested. But on that, and you can see from that point that the education really works on that field. So the whole system has a structure, which is that when we are planning adaptation measures and addressing the key challenges in forestry, the first part is that we have to estimate the impact of climate change on forests, and on the other side, the regional variation in forests. And then in that we are developing possible adaptation measures and policy, but at the third step, then the informing education of forest management, forest owners come into focus, and this is the part where all those measures that are produced on some other level are then transferred to the practical forestry. So to conclude, what is the importance of education in forestry sector is that real adaptation to climate change occurs at the local level and by the local actors in forest. This is quite clear. So we have to address those people. Policy support, resources for education, training and dissemination of knowledge to target groups and in forestry are extremely needed. There will be a continuous challenge to provide scientific knowledge in a form that local managers and policymakers can also utilize. And this is what we have a lot of efforts also in our project has been devoted to that, to be as simple as possible, that also foresters can digest that knowledge that we are offering to them. The fourth is that the awareness and knowledge of forest owner and practitioners improve the implementation adaptation measures. Without that knowledge and awareness, we cannot do a lot. And at the end, the remaining uncertainties about the climate change impacts, the adaptive capacity in and the suitability of adaptation measures create a need for monitoring of impacts and evaluation of adaptation response. So this is the process that is the same as in education. So when we do something, we have to also measure that impact and then improve the program or the measure in a next step. Thank you very much. This is all. This is my part, and I hope this will also generate some fruitful discussion at the end of today. Thank you.